Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Before Alouette, there was no housing alternative for them.
We take you inside the province's new involuntary centre for people with serious mental health and addictions challenges. Critics wonder when more voluntary help will come. Plus,
funny things is now compared to then, it's that you can negotiate.
there are more places to rent in BC and even some incentives. But what about prices?
It's not like we are seeing $500 in reduction.
And
everything from a soft consumer to rising rents in some locations, rising input costs.
two long-time Seaside restaurants on the Lower Mainland say farewell.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. A new mental health facility in BC will soon start treating some patients against their will. It's part of the province's push to tackle a growing crisis around mental health and addictions. The CBC's Georgie Smythe takes us inside and why some say it's not the only answer.
This is new last resort mental health care in BC. Cottages with light-filled rooms and communal spaces, all set inside a 12-foot fence.
At Alouette Homes, they will receive specialized, holistic care, including psychiatric treatment, psychosocial support, and 24/7 personalized, person-centered care in a safe and home-like setting.
It's a secure, unique and first-of-its-kind facility for people with long-term, very complex mental health disorders who could also be suffering from substance use or a brain injury.
All of our doors have this feature where if somebody locks themselves in or barricades themselves in, we can actually still access from outside.
It'll serve 18 men in involuntary care admitted against their will under the Mental Health Act of BC.
Those folks are the ones who not only would be ranting and raving, but would be really exposing themselves and others to an unacceptable degree of harm.
The province says it's not a solution, but a start to confronting BC's growing mental health emergency as random violence reignites a conversation about crime and people in crisis. Last month, Alberta passed the Compassionate Intervention Act to force people into care when substance use makes them a danger to themselves or others. Advocates say governments shouldn't forget about early interventions too.
This is a crisis situation. They are looking for help that isn't always there. When they do get help, it can be fleeting help. It can be help where they revolve through a series of revolving doors.
BC has also promised an overhaul of the Mental Health Act as it tries to modernise its response to this deeply rooted challenge. Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Vancouver.
Two men have been arrested in BC in connection with the killing of a 51-year-old Ontario man. Harjeet Dada was shot and killed in a Mississauga parking lot on May 14th. Police say after a comprehensive investigation, two suspects were tracked to Delta. The two 21-year-olds were arrested May 28th and each have been charged with first-degree murder. They're now being taken to Ontario to face trial.
We also recognize that this incident caused concern within the community. These arrests mark a significant development in the case, and we want to reassure the public that we remain committed to a thorough and ongoing investigation.
The victim's family has said that in recent years, Dada was receiving both threats and extortion calls. A man has been arrested and charged after the death of a Granville Street nightclub promoter in 2018. 23-year-old Calwinder Tind, whose loved ones called him Chris, was stabbed and killed outside the Cabana Lounge after a fight between two groups of people. Police believe Tind tried to intervene when he was attacked. Investigators say 28-year-old Sukhjit Sidhu of New Westminster has now been charged with second-degree murder. He remains in jail. The Lower Mainland has become known for wildly fluctuating housing prices. But with May's real estate numbers out, the numbers look relatively consistent. Justin McElroy breaks down why that might be.
Over the last 2 years, something has changed in Southwest BC's housing market. After decades of constant motion in prices and sales, things have become, well, almost predictable. May's real estate numbers just came out and nothing really changed. Here is a chart. It shows the average number of sales per month for all of Greater Vancouver on a yearly basis. It's been at just over 2,000 units sold a month for a long time now, something we haven't seen this century. And in the Fraser Valley, the average sales price has been flat for 2 years. Again, something we haven't seen for a long time. So why is this? Well, one reason is caution, both over future interest rate decisions and the broader global economy.
There's that uncertainty factor around the economy. And in a market like Vancouver, that even that little small risk of job loss could really create a lot of uncertainty around potential buying. So we don't see a lot of sales at this point.
But there's another very basic factor in play. People aren't picking up what sellers are putting down. After all, the average price for a detached home in Greater Vancouver is still north of $2 million. Overall, these price points in this market are just too high to create real bidding wars.
Prices are significantly higher than they were in 2019 at this point as well, adding on to other inflationary factors over the past few years. So I think for a lot of potential buyers, it is still very unaffordable. It's always kind of been an unaffordable market, and that's just been kind of amplified over the past few years.
Of course, things could change, and in Vancouver real estate, they often do. But when you add in the number of condos sitting empty, it means that despite a very stable market, there's a lot of questions about long-term instability. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
Now, still with housing, you may have noticed more places to rent in your neighborhood or even incentives to move in. Canada's housing agency says more units are coming onto the market. But as Pinky Wong explains, prices remain high for many people.
Parts of Vancouver's West End are freeing up for renters after years of low vacancy.
Compared to then, the price is a little bit down. Maybe they move out from downtown. That's why it's more option available.
And in some buildings, landlords are offering incentives.
1 month free and also like the $1,000 gift card, Amazon gift card, yeah. That's a promotion. But
the funny thing is now compared to then, it's that you can negotiate.
The Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says BC's rental market has softened thanks to lower immigration and more supply hitting the market. More than 2,300 new units from January to April alone. That's a 22% increase compared to the same time last year. But that doesn't mean rental rates are dropping dramatically.
The trend seemed to be flattening, but at higher rent price points because those higher end units coming to the market.
These renters agree.
It's not like we are seeing $500 in reduction or there are so many places up there available. It's not like that. There is still maybe 10% variation in price or 10% more places available.
I check marketplace every now and then, and I see that the prices are coming down. The problem is if you want to stay in the same place, I don't think the landlords are aware of that.
This real estate professor says landlords may offer incentives like a free month's rent so that the base rent doesn't fall too far over time.
It's not like we have a problem that condos are too affordable in Vancouver. Prices have barely come down, interest rates are higher than they have been recently, and so affordability remains terrible.
Davidoff says it is still a tough market for people trying to buy a home, so the need for rentals remains. Pinky Wong, CBC News, Vancouver.
You may have enjoyed some salmon or coconut shrimp and a beverage or two on their patios over the years, but two popular waterfront restaurants on the Lower Mainland are set to close. The Boathouse is shutting its locations in White Rock and Kitsilano. The CBC's Rob Easton went to find out why.
We used to swim here as teenagers, right? When there was no promenade or anything. The promenade's great, but now people complain that it's too crowded now because, you know, you pay park and all that kind of stuff, which has been going on for a long time now. But so it used to be how many restaurants when we were kids?
These three White Rock locals have seen many beachfront restaurants come and go. The popular Seaside town has been a getaway for people across the Lower Mainland for longer than even they've been around. But one spot has been there longer than most. Now, the giant 3-story boathouse known for patio drinks and sunsets is set to join the list of restaurants that have come and gone from this strip.
A lot of the restaurants only spend one season here. because they're not making it. So I guess, there's so many restaurants, and I guess everyone's getting not enough.
Some blame it on the overall economy. It's not easy to run a business. Costs are up. And many owners say it's hard to make it. And this business analyst points to a range of factors.
But this is all part and parcel with a lot of the closings we've seen of restaurants and other retailers over the last couple of years because of all these headwinds, everything from a soft consumer to rising rents in some locations, rising input costs, whether it's materials or food or labor. And sometimes the numbers just don't work anymore. The demand just doesn't work.
Last year, the Business Association says 43% of area businesses saw a drop in business. The reasons aren't clear, from weather to parking, but the BIA says a majority of owners want to make it easier for people to visit the area. This bartender says it's a whole bunch of factors.
Any way to entice people to actually spend their money in the businesses would be great. Great to see the beach super packed, but if it's all beachgoers who aren't spending money here, then it's a problem because customers can't find parking or anything.
The Boathouse says their leases in both Kitsilano and White Rock were up, so they decided to close both locations down as of September 21st. They say they're working to relocate the employees at the two beachfront spots to the remaining locations in New West and Port Moody. And those left on the beach will find other patios to hang out on. Rob Easton, CBC News, White Rock.
The BC Wildfire Service says the Summit Lake blaze that closed a section of the Alaska Highway west of Fort Nelson on Monday has now grown to about 26 square kilometers. The highway was briefly open to single-lane alternating traffic Tuesday morning, but has since closed again. The Kiskatinaw River wildfire is the other blaze of note burning in BC's northeast, as you can see. The Wildfire Service says it remains out of control and is just over 39 square kilometers large. Wildfire teams are monitoring both and keeping a close eye on upcoming weather systems.
When we see those intensifying winds on Thursday and through to the weekend, we do expect that will increase fire behavior that we're seeing up in the Prince George Fire Center right now.
There are 70 active wildfires with 10 new starts in the last 24 hours in BC. Environment Canada, meanwhile, has issued a special air quality statement for northeastern BC because of wildfire smoke. It says poor air quality and reduced visibility are expected to last for the next 24 to 48 hours. And here's Darius Madabi with a first look at the weather. Have you got that fire danger rating up there?
That's right.
Concerning northeast?
Yes, and very consistently so. We haven't really seen the Northeast drop below high or extreme fire danger for a long time. I was just overlaying the fire danger map with the perimeters of those two wildfires of note, and they are both either in or immediately adjacent to this large area of extreme fire danger. So keeping a close eye on that over the next few days. And then I want to talk about the South Coast a bit. We'll refocus on wildfire and drought later in the show, but for now, I want to talk about the South Coast, where we've got a little bit of cloud building in tonight, but it clears up again pretty fast tomorrow morning. And then we've got pretty much just clear skies, a few showers possible for the North Island, but really that's the only precipitation to speak of. Temperatures, I think, are going to be the bigger story this week as they continue to climb as we get into the weekend. This map only takes us to Friday, but expect the possibility of a pretty big jump as we get into Saturday and Sunday.
Okay. Darius, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Premier David Eby is on a day 3 of a trade mission to Asia where he's looking for new customers to invest in BC's clean energy sector and LNG.
These companies have taken stakes in projects in British Columbia, and they wanted to know about our plans for electrification, the North Coast transmission line, our support for the mining sector, permitting issues.
Eby says Japan is moving away from fossil fuels like Alberta crude oil and are interested in this province's mining industry to help supply minerals needed to make microchips and batteries. A delegation from Vancouver City Council, meanwhile, is in Ottawa to meet with Prime Minister Carney's cabinet. Councillor Lisa Dominato is among those in the capital. She says they plan to discuss housing affordability, infrastructure, and public safety.
What I'm hearing from residents is increasing fear and frustration around unprovoked attacks, repeat offenders, the catch and release model. And so certainly that conversation will be around bail reform.
Dominato says it's still not clear which ministers they will meet with. They will be in Ottawa until Friday. It is some big news for BC's interior. Kamloops is set to become the hub of an artificial intelligence-assisted data center project. How that is boosting jobs in the region? After the break. Surrey firefighters and police are looking into a massive blaze that engulfed a house in Cloverdale Monday night. No one was hurt, thankfully, but the house is badly damaged. As Michelle Gomez reports, the blaze is not believed to be suspicious.
I came outside, ran across the road, and within minutes, the full frontage of the house was a big ball of flames.
Firefighters responded to a house fire here on the 18,000 block of 66A Avenue in Cloverdale shortly after 9 p.m. Monday evening. This neighbor says he watched the fire spread quickly.
It was very hot. Across the street, I could feel the heat. The cars behind us are melted from the heat. It's very intense.
Firefighters spent hours working to extinguish the blaze. Greg McRobbie with Surrey Fire Services says the family inside evacuated safely and no one was injured.
When they arrived, they found basically the entire front of the building was engulfed in flames. Crews split up bringing second apparatus in on the street behind us to ensure no further structures were exposed from this fire. Worked quickly to put it out, ensured that no residents were inside.
Investigators are on scene Tuesday morning looking into the cause. The fire is deemed not suspicious. Surrey police said earlier the fire may be linked to a vehicle in front of the home, but nothing is confirmed.
Surrey Fire Service advised us last night that they think it may have had something to do with an electric vehicle that was parked and charging at the time, but their investigator will confirm that today.
Michelle Gomez, CBC News, Surrey.
BC's interior is set to become the center of an artificial intelligence-assisted data center project. It will be one of 6 AI centers sponsored by Bell. Shelley Joyce toured the first one, learning about how corporations are using AI in hard-to-reach areas of the province.
Though not visually stunning, it's big news for Kamloops and for Thompson Rivers University. The first of Bell's AI fabric facilities will come online in June, with a second local facility planned for next year in partnership with TRU.
Very large pipes.
What does that mean right now? 15 new jobs on site and dozens of other support positions from the trades.
So in this facility alone, during construction, there was 150 tradespeople and tens of millions of dollars invested in.
Huge deal for Kamloops. I mean, this becomes an anchor for Bell for their network of systems that are going to go throughout Canada to support AI.
The dry climate in Kamloops and the availability of space made it a perfect launch pad for this AI infrastructure.
The name of Kamloops itself means meeting of the waters, and as a result, we're surrounded by hydro dams up all of those rivers, all of those waters. That hydropower gives us very resilient power and a large access to a lot of power.
TRU has a large trades program, so that means lots of workers for projects like this one. Kyle Kerr is excited about the possibilities for guys like him.
I am terminating these wires in the transformer. It's in town work, and for a young guy like myself, it's nice to be able to still be at home doing like cool projects like this.
Love it or hate it, AI technology is here to stay. All of it housed out of a simple-looking rack system like this one.
As a person is asking a query to that AI, those requests are actually coming in to those 80 racks, and then that answer is coming back to that individual instantaneously. Above, you see all of the cooling and electrical infrastructure that goes into cooling these racks and powering these racks, and then taking that heat energy away, and in this case, to be used by 12 local industrial users to heat their buildings and their processes.
Kamloops, the first to go live with this network in June. A facility in Merritt, BC will open later this year. Shelley Joyce, CBC News, Kamloops.
Clouds clinging to Mount Cheam just east of Chilliwack. It is heating up in the Fraser Valley and beyond. Darius has your BC-wide weather forecast next.
I'm Stephen Quinn, and I love living here in Vancouver, BC. It's a city with world-renowned beauty, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. In our new daily podcast, This is Vancouver, we're exploring the diverse range of issues and stories in the city, the good, the bad, and everything in between, as told by the people who live it every day. Don't miss This is Vancouver, available wherever you get your podcasts, and I'll talk to you soon.
The White House has confirmed U.S. President Donald Trump will double tariffs on steel and aluminum to 50%. That new rate will kick in on Wednesday. As Nisha Patel reports, Canadian industries say the hike will have a devastating impact, and they're worried about the future.
Good afternoon, everybody.
The White House says U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum imports are about to double, going from 25% to 50% just after midnight.
This is a president who doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk too, and he's delivering on his promises to bolster our steel and aluminum industries in this country and to protect those jobs.
Tariffs have already hit Canadian steel producers hard. As costs rise, U.S. importers are buying less, and shipments south of the border are down 30%.
We basically consider the U.S. market closed, completely closed, doors slammed shut, if you will, to Canadian steel. So this is our SOS moment, I'm calling it. We need urgent action.
The steel industry employs thousands in cities like Hamilton and Sault Ste. Marie. Nearly 700 workers have been laid off so far.
We can't keep producing if one of our major markets is shuttered. I expect dramatic acceleration of production level loss and job loss.
About 90% of Canada's aluminum is destined for the U.S., but it's American buyers that are mostly bearing the brunt of higher costs.
And that's actually the biggest chunk of Canada's trade surplus with the U.S. is actually aluminum products, and in aluminum more than steel. The U.S. economy just doesn't have the capacity.
The tariffs affect more than raw materials. Toronto-based New Age sells garage cabinets and outdoor kitchens, which also face steeper duties.
There's a lot of uncertainty from the consumer. We're trying to eat as much of the cost as possible.
Still, the company weathered the steel and aluminum tariffs back in 2018, which lasted about a year.
This has been done in a very quick manner, which is that's the most challenging thing. But it is what it is. You just got to roll with the punches.
Those economic punches, though, seem to be more frequent these days. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
The federal government has proposed new legislation to tighten the border. The wide-sweeping bill aims to strengthen Canada's response to national and economic security threats and enhance the integrity of the immigration system. As Evan Dyer explains, it also includes measures that Ottawa says will address some American concerns.
This morning, I introduced Bill C-2, the Strong Borders Act.
The bill proposes a number of changes to Canada's criminal code, police powers, and the way asylum claims are processed. A big part of it is about fentanyl.
We'll ensure Canada has the right tools to keep our borders secure, combat transnational organized crime and fentanyl, and disrupt illicit financing.
Canada has been under pressure on fentanyl.
It's pouring in from China through Mexico and Canada, and they've got to stop it. And if they don't stop it, the tariffs are going to get worse, a lot worse.
There are a number of elements in the bill that have been irritants for the U.S., so we are addressing some of those issues.
Public Safety Minister Gary Ananda-Sangari says the bill will give Canadian border guards more authority to search goods intended for export. The U.S. border czar has already been briefed, and Canada's envoy to Trump, Dominic LeBlanc, is selling the bill in Washington. The U.S. is embroiled in its own immigration drama with daily raids by immigration agency ICE, as its ambassador to Canada explained.
We're now tracking down people who are murderers, thieves, and rapists who are in the country illegally.
Refugee lawyers say the Canadian bill mimics aspects of U.S. law.
The government has adopted this FAR, which is essentially similar to an element in the U.S. asylum system. In the U.S., if you're in the country for more than a year, you can't seek refugee protection.
The government is asking other parties to support the bill, but Conservatives aren't sure it will be enough for Trump.
Has he listened to anything? Of course not. He'll do it his way. We've seen what he's done in the last 3 months.
I think that the title of the act is for show for the Trump administration.
There's a lot of doubt still about exactly what this 120-page bill means in practice, but all agree it's a major overhaul that goes far beyond the border itself. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
This week marks 10 years since the Truth and Reconciliation Commission created its calls to action to address the dark legacy of residential schools in Canada. The calls, born of school survivors' stories shared over 6 years and commemorated with a somber ceremony in 2015.
Today I will place this basket in our sacred Benwood box for transfer to the National Centre of Truth and Reconciliation. May it serve as a prominent reminder that we have wept together as a country.
That is TRC Commissioner Chief Wilton Littlechild addressing dignitaries and government leaders in Ottawa in 2015, holding a basket bearing the ashes of burned tissues used to dry survivors' tears. CBC Vancouver's Indigenous Affairs reporter Wamish Hamilton now on what's changed since that pivotal day.
10 years ago, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission released 94 calls to action. The TRC was set up in 2008. In over 6 years, officials traveled across Canada hearing from thousands of residential school survivors. I was working as a reporter at CBC Manitoba then. It was a stellar moment, both in my career as a journalist and as an Indigenous citizen. That day was a touch point. In my opinion, the calls to action represented a shift in how Indigenous people were going to be considered and understood. A map for Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in Canada, reconciling our dark past with a brighter future we're working to create together. The calls to action are a call for just that, action. There has been some progress as far as I see it. Before, I never heard land acknowledgements anywhere. Now, this diplomatic gesture is more commonplace. Even the king acknowledged the Algonquin and Anishinaabe in his speech from the throne. It's not a be-all, end-all, but it adds gravitas when taken together with other diplomatic measures. And the last decade hasn't been without challenges. Some municipal officials refuse land acknowledgements. Schools struggle with implementing Indigenous curriculum. Indigenous people are more likely to have chronic health issues and less likely to have a family doctor. And some think the pace of reconciliation is too slow. No one said the path we're on was going to be an easy one. As we mark this anniversary, consider that many of our successes have come as a result of collaboration. We need to take each other into account. We are all part of this. Too often, we treat each other as though life is an episode of Survivor, that we can vote each other off the island when it suits us. In reality, we can't do that. We're here, all of us, to stay. What we can do is decide how we want to live together, now and onward. I consider the 94 calls to action excellent starting points. And 10 years down the road, they've given us a lot to talk about with each other. In Vancouver, I'm Wamish Hamilton.
In Saskatchewan, people continue to flee as wildfires burn in the middle of that province. More on the ongoing devastation and efforts to protect more communities after this. Wildfires in Saskatchewan continue to force more people out of their homes. Residents fleeing from the L'Orange area spent Monday night driving through hazardous conditions. As Alexander Silberman reports, in other parts of the province, fires are now entering communities and damaging structures.
Fast-moving flames have forced more than 7,000 people in the L'Orange area to flee their homes, the latest community in Saskatchewan under an evacuation order. High winds pushed wildfire dangerously close to the community Monday, with flames breaching the airport about 6 kilometers from town. Residents of L'Orange, Air-Ronge, the Lac-L'Orange Reserve, and anywhere within a 20-kilometer radius were ordered to evacuate late Monday afternoon.
Holy
Hundreds of cars have been traveling down the main road out of town under hazardous conditions. Fire burning on both sides of the highway. Heavy wildfire smoke and limited to zero visibility is making the evacuation slow. The province says vehicles are being escorted through, only when safe to do so.
There was fire burning on both sides of the road, and to me, that's too close for comfort.
Adding to the chaos, limited gas and widespread phone and internet outages. And with the airport closed due to heavy smoke and fire, patients at the local hospital had to be taken out by ambulance instead of by plane. In Saskatchewan's northeast, more people have been forced to leave Denair Beach. The final remaining firefighters and all essential staff were evacuated yesterday. The southern half of the community has burned to the ground as neighbors watched from afar.
We shared video camera footage from our cameras of our houses until each one sequentially lit on fire.
Thousands of evacuees are arriving here in Prince Albert in search of help and a place to stay. This hotel is where tired and relieved evacuees from L'Orange are arriving to register with the Red Cross. But accommodations are quickly filling up, and many are driving hours south in search of a place to stay. The province is now looking to Alberta, hoping evacuees might be able to go there. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Prince Albert, Saskatchewan.
The weather update is brought to you by BC Cancer Foundation. Support BC Cancer Foundation by leaving a gift in your will and join our 90-year legacy of driving life-saving innovations.
Darius Madavi is here with our BC-wide weather forecast. You've got snowpack levels, drought, and even an update on the wildfires.
That's right. Lots to talk about. Snowpack level update. We're basically exactly where we were 2 weeks ago. Things were looking good for the first few days after May 15th because we got some extra snow on the mountains, actually. But then we got a couple heat waves and it quickly melted. So we're sitting exactly where we were. In terms of the drought conditions, very similar to where we were last week, although up in the northeast, remaining still severe to extreme fire danger, some improvement on Vancouver Island, and the new basins we've gotten in the southeast also joining at a level 3 drought, which really continues the trend of every single basin that has been added continuing to enter under drought conditions. Some have dropped out of them now, but entering the season, every single basin so far with drought conditions. Very unusual. Up in the northeast, you can also see the fire danger correlates very strongly with the drought, not unexpectedly. Where we have some precipitation down in the south, we see improvement, but because of those ongoing drought conditions, even if we did get some rain up in the northeast, which we haven't really, it would be a very short reprieve if it was a reprieve at all, just because of how intense the drought really is up there. Now, over the next few days, we're going to continue to see this high pressure over the BC, or at least off the coast of BC. Over the next few days, it's going to deflect any weather systems up to the north while we continue to see temperatures rise slowly here in the south. To a lesser extent up in the north as well. It's not until we get into the weekend that those temperatures really start to jump up as that high pressure builds actually over the province. And again, in the meantime, any weather systems deflected up to the north, maybe a bit of that precipitation making its way into the central interior or up along the BC-Alberta border. That would be good news. But also we may see those winds pick up too. Temperatures climb over the next few days. Expect to see that especially in the south. But in the north, we're not out of the woods either. Temperatures approaching 30 degrees by the end of the work week, but exceeding 30 degrees almost certainly by the weekend. Now, winds. This is going to be a big story in terms of those fires, especially up in the north as we see those fires start to really pick up. The first place I want to highlight is up by the Summit Lake wildfire, and you can see I've overlaid the highways. You can see why this is a wildfire of note. That perimeter really just approaching that highway, which is why we've seen those closures. And again, those winds starting to pick up, especially once we get into Thursday. and then Friday. And it's a very similar situation down here for the Kiskatna River wildfire, where we have that perimeter over the highway. We've had those evacuations of places like Kelly Lake, which is just over here, and we will likely continue to see more evacuations, again, as those winds really pick up Thursday, Friday, and potentially holding into the weekend. Conditions across the province tomorrow, Dan, mostly sunshine. We got a few showers potentially popping up in a few places like the North Coast, maybe some convective showers in the south, and a nice, easy 5-day forecast in Vancouver.
Okay, Darius, thanks very much.
Thank you.
The UN is demanding an investigation into another deadly incident involving an aid distribution site in southern Gaza. Palestinian authorities and witnesses say Israeli forces fired on civilians. It's the third deadly incident involving people heading to aid sites in as many days. Tom Perry reports from Jerusalem.
A large crowd of Palestinians had gathered near this site that's run by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. That's the organization that's backed by the U.S., backed by Israel. It's kind of displaced the United Nations as the lead agency distributing food in southern Gaza. So this large crowd had gathered early this morning. It was going to advance toward the site where the aid is given out. But eyewitnesses, people we've heard from, say that they came under fire from Israeli troops who control that area. Now, the Israel Defense Force, the IDF, put out a statement today saying that its troops in that area saw what they call suspects who were outside the approved zone, the approved area where people could go to advance to get this food aid. They say that they fired warning shots, and that when these suspects kept moving toward Israeli positions, they opened fire. Now, they described this as a few suspects, but we're talking about more than 24 dead here and many, many more injured. So this is more than a few people who were involved. And again, this is not the first time that this happened. On Sunday, 31 people were killed near the same area when they were lining up to go to get food aid. Now, the Israeli military, the Israeli government has vehemently denied being involved in that incident on Sunday. It actually released video, but it's claiming to show masked gunmen near Han Yunis firing on Palestinians who had been gathering looted aid. But we did hear today from the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. He's calling for an independent investigation into what happened on Sunday. He says whoever was involved, whoever was responsible, needs to be brought to justice. That garnered a blistering response today from Israel's foreign ministry. It says that Guterres didn't call out Hamas in his statement and actually called the statement by the Secretary General a disgrace. So a very angry message there going toward this UN Secretary General coming from the government of Israel. Tom Perry, CBC News, Jerusalem.
To extract salt from one of the world's biggest sources, farmers in India have always relied on dirty, unhealthy, and pricey diesel. Now, solar power has transformed their lives and their livelihoods. Our South Asia correspondent, Salima Shivji, went to hear some of their stories.
The work is beyond grueling. Hours on end under the blistering sun, deep in this arid desert in Kutch, at the western tip of India's Gujarat state. All to cultivate the only treasure here, salt. Devabai Sawadia has been working this salt pan since he was a child. He'll one day teach the skills to his grandson too. But Devabai has an edge over previous generations, the ability to harness solar power. These two panels that have completely changed his life. We finally make a profit, he says, after years of toiling. Before the solar panels, there was barely enough money to eat, and not a rupee more. It's solar energy that now powers the pumps digging deep into the bone-dry earth here for the massive amounts of water needed to cultivate the salt. Diesel used to dominate the lives of these salt farmers. Devabai would start the salt season already heavily in debt, borrowing thousands of dollars to buy barrels of the toxin-emitting fuel just to be able to work his pumps. Sputtering machines that ran 24 hours a day, spewing exhaust. Now this one is used only as a backup at night or when it's cloudy. Because of the smoke. The constant smoke from the diesel machines would make us sick and cause us so many more problems, he says, but no longer with solar taking over. Easy, clean, and saving the family thousands. With the diesel pump stifled, Devabai's wife Jessie Ben washes up in quiet reflection. She's grateful that so much has changed, even if life camping out in makeshift tents in the desert for months on end to harvest the salt pans is still tough. We built a bigger home in town and threw a big wedding for our son, she says. And still we have enough money left over for our setup here. The family is no longer begging for loans from salt traders. That's why solar panels have multiplied all across this vast expanse of white salt plains, where much of India's table salt is made. The world's third largest producer of the staple, taking full advantage of the blaring desert heat and reaping the benefits.
This salt was harvested later than usual, and it's actually better quality, and that was made possible because of the move to solar power. The panels bought with a massive government subsidy from both the state and federal governments that cut the price by 80%.
An initiative very much in line with India's push to invest in renewable energy. The idea is to slowly wean the country off its reliance on coal. Emphasis on slowly. Delhi has been adamant, despite global criticism, that it will still use the dirtiest of fossil fuels for many years. India needs coal for more than 70% of all the power it generates. So incentives to persuade Indians to switch to solar power are a win for the environment and cost-effective for the government, prolonging the salt season and increasing production.
20,000 rupees for one barrel. Wow.
Even so, this NGO worker says it took years of convincing before the authorities signed on. But he persisted, listing the benefits, both financial and social. With diesel generators, the farmers were trapped near their tents at all times, Bharat Bhai Somera says, forced to constantly monitor the machines. The region's new reliance on solar power has repaired community bonds, he says, allowing the farmers more freedom of movement. A better life, even if there's still intense hardship and isolation. Farmers camp in rickety tents for the entire 8-month salt season. There are no clinics, no family doctors. And this abandoned bus in the middle of the vast desert is actually a makeshift school. The children tucked inside are so keen to learn, they're quizzing each other before the teacher even arrives. Jerabai the Macha is fully focused on building a better life for his 4 school-age children. I have a new tractor, a new house, a motorcycle, he says, all because I switched to solar panels several years ago. Before that, we couldn't even afford to buy a bicycle. Far from the desert in his village, he takes me past his old home before rounding the corner to show off his new one. All shiny bricks and much more room. I'm benefiting, he says proudly, making more than double what I used to. A new reality that was foreign to the salt farmers who came before him. Many here say their grandfathers had lives filled with sadness in this desert. But now, after solar, there's pure joy.
You say tomato, and I say tomato. But what do Vancouverites say? We're going to hit the streets to find out if the city has its own accent.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC inbox.
Check out CBC News BC, your local streaming channel. It's a free ad-supported TV channel available 24/7, delivering breaking news, weather updates, daily headlines, and sharing stories that matter to British Columbians. Stream your favorite CBC programs like The Early Edition, BC Today, and On the Coast. CBC News BC is available on connected TV platforms.
When you travel around the world, or even across the country, you may notice different accents. You can probably pick out a Toronto twang or a Alberta drawl.
But what does Vancouver have? Does it have an accent? We went to Robson Square to ask.
I would say it doesn't, because it's such a mix of everyone from everywhere, you know, because it's a pretty big city. I think that there isn't a specific regional accent, whereas I feel like when you go to Alberta, to a smaller town, or even like New Brunswick, for instance, the smaller towns have more distinct accent. I've been told that I have a very strong Canadian accent by Americans, but even from Vancouver friends as well. So I don't know where that comes from, but I don't know, I've been told that I sound very Canadian.
I think so. And it's funny that you're from the CBC, because I always feel like Vancouverites speak like CBC radio hosts. It's, I would say, a little bit cleaner, more focused on enunciation.
I have no idea what it is, but it is something with the A's, yeah. There's also a Montreal, I don't know where it's from. So the word I find it on is family. In Toronto we'd say family. In BC they say family.
I work in Chipotle, and majority of them, they are like, if they want a bowl, and they are always like, a bowl, please. They're having this stretching words. Yeah.
It's very subtle, but it's definitely, it's the Canadian accent as we perceive it with a twist.
So I'm from Ontario, so I mean, people from around here tend to say that I have an accent. I've been here long enough that I don't really see it as much. Depends where you go though. Like East Vancouver is a little different than the West End, I find.
What a diverse group, eh?
Mm-hmm. I'd say so. Mm-hmm. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC.
And we'll have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. Good night.